So as a community, we've been talking a lot about stigma and its effect on BPD. We talk a lot about doing something about it, and those conversations are done with real intentions. They're just not backed up with a ton of cash normally. So this year we decided we were done with the conversation, and the time seemed right, overright. The past 5 years, I've been involved in working to change the narrative of borderline personality disorder. I don't dislike my diagnosis. I don't want to change my diagnosis. I don't want to rename it. I don't want to do any of those things. I want to change how people see it, just like they did with schizophrenia. But through my job as a designer in the not-for-profit sector, I've got a skill that I've learned, and that's about engaging humans and raising the profile of hard-to-access issues. So, for context, I've worked on national domestic violence campaigns and substance use campaigns. And this has set me up pretty well for designing this campaign. So with that in mind, and with the support of my fellow members of the New South Wales branch of the Foundation, I contacted the board of the Australian Foundation, and I pitched an idea. It was a national strategy to support the 2018 BPD Awareness Week with an anti-stigma campaign. Not surprisingly, this wasn't a new idea, and the Foundation had already been brainstorming this. They had a really catchy title. All they needed was a plan and someone to execute it. So Know BPD, Know Stigma was born. We know there's a lot of negative talks out there surrounding BPD, and we acknowledge this. But we use a strength-based approach to change the narrative around the words. We're also really thankful to receive a grant from the National Mental Health Commission to make this a possibility. We truly believe that education leads to understanding, and with understanding comes compassion, and compassion leads to empathy. We believe that people, once they truly know the facts about BPD, will see the complex human beings behind it, and this will decrease stigma and end the discrimination. We simply believe that to know and understand BPD will eventually result in no stigma. The campaign delivers facts in an accessible way. It aims to be non-threatening. It promotes recovery, positivity, and hope. It asks for compassion, empathy, and understanding. And as you can see, evident via the colour theory and the graphic identity marks, they're designed to be whimsical, imperfect, and comforting. But they deliver strong, empowering messages. Voices are really important to us. Listening to the experts themselves, like consumers and carers. And of course, bringing the strong voices of our allies in the treatment, research, and caring communities, like Bryn over there. Our professors, mental health clinicians, and support workers. The campaign is designed using co-design and co-production principles, which means the users design the product with the support of myself, the designer. Consultation and feedback is sought at every point of production in a systemic way that removes hierarchy and power roles by anonymous input. This means that no one has a more powerful voice than anyone else, and decisions are made by majority impact. Co-design has a really strong evidence-based research behind it, and it's a method of design that requires specialisation. It's the main method of my practice and something that I've chosen to specialise in. So the project is not finished yet, obviously. So this is a sneak preview of all the campaign that will launch on the 1st of October, which is the start of BPD Awareness Week. We have events in 6 states and territories, and at this point, so we really want to make sure that you sign up and you get involved and you make BPD Awareness Week really loud. You can follow us on social media as well. Please make sure that through today, and you'll be seeing them all around, and Awareness Week, that you find time for self-care. Please look around at our campaign material and fill in a feedback form on the Foundation's table. I did have one, Eileen's waving it around. We need you to fill in this form because with this form, I'm going to use this data to hound people to give me more money to print more things. So please fill it in because I need to say, look, all these people that said that we should have this. So please, 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 please. fill it in. I want to thank you for staying with me on what's been a bit of a heartbreaking journey for myself. This has been one of the hardest presentations that I've ever written. It's taken me a long time to write it. Obviously, I had to read some really ignorant words. I had to look at some really horrific images, which I had to then Photoshop, so I wasn't going to trigger everybody in the room. And I had to sit with those things. I want everyone in this room to know that if you were one of the people that completed one of the 4 surveys that we put out, I read every single one of your words, and your words were important, and your words were the words that I just showed. They're important to me, and they matter to everybody involved in this project. And on that, I want to say that I'm really lucky that I've not had to hold on to this alone. I want to acknowledge my partner in crime and personal cheerleader, Karen Bailey, from the South Australian branch. Wave out. She is the conduit between you and this project. She's the one who spent hours collecting information, and I just really make it pretty. Meeting her and working with her on this project has made it more than just a job for me. She's an amazing sounding board, fact checker, an organisational guru, and without her, I'd probably still be lost in Adelaide. I cannot say enough wonderful things about her, except to say that if you like our campaign, please make sure you tell her so. If you don't like the campaign, tell her so as well. Don't tell me. It's all her fault. And I want to also acknowledge the hard work that the Australian BPD Foundation and the board and the collaboration group have done with this project as well. Their feedback and suggestions and the content and the guidance that they've given me, especially Rita Brown, obviously, who has been so trusting of us and encouraging of Karen and I. And I just want to really say that I really believe that we can rewrite the narrative behind BPD and change the conversation. If I was able to rewrite my brain's entire blueprint and become the person that I am today from where I was, then pretty much anything is possible. And the last thing I want to say is that to all the people in the room who have a lived experience, the first step to destroying stigma and discrimination is recovering. So much like Kez was talking about, and like other people have talked about, prove them wrong. That keeps me going all the time. Like, I do exactly what Kez does. I email people that told me that I was going to be dead and that I was worthless. And I'm like, well, I just went to my 30th country, so I don't really know. Look at me on a stage. Like, whatever. If someone tells you that you can't recover, they're not the right clinician for you, or they're not the right friend for you. Find somebody else. You know, keep moving on. Don't waste your time. To the carers in the room, I want to thank you for your patience and kindness. It's important for me to acknowledge that I never actually had a carer, so I'm getting them now, and I'm very grateful for them. But also, what I want to tell you is something that it's important for you to know. For recovery, you need to take care of yourselves. Stop putting other people first. Take care of yourselves, and don't feel guilty about that. And for the people that work with us, the clinicians and the professors and, you know, the fancy dudes with the titles, I want to thank you so much for continuing to work with us. And I truly acknowledge that sometimes you walk a bit of a lonely path as well. But I also want to thank you for being who you are and having that hope and recovery, because without that, we wouldn't have it ourselves. Some of the best things that my clinicians ever did was that they didn't walk ahead of me, but they also didn't even walk beside me. They walked a really tiny step behind me, and they encouraged me to lead. And when I fell back, they were there. So I think that's really important, to lead from behind in a way. This is the last thing I have to say. This is my last slide. I don't even need to say anything about this. Margaret Mead's one of my personal heroes. And every time I think that we won't be able to overcome things, I look at this quote and I realise how true it is. And I want to thank every single one of you thoughtful, committed citizens that are in the room right now. And I think in 20 years there will be no need for me to step onto this podium and say this again, and I'm really happy about that because I'll be too old by then. But thank you very much for coming with me.